Hi there, thanks for joining me. This video explores media making by connecting two very important themes, creativity and Creative Commons. And just so that I don't get any smart-ass interruptions like I have in the last few videos, I thought that I'd go straight to my Zoom conversation with David
Beckham?
No, I'm going to show part of my chat with David
Schwimmer?
No, David
Hasselhoff?
Seriously?
David Letterman? David Caruso? David Spade? It's not David Duchovny, is it? Arrgh.
Just roll the tape. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is creativity, and you're currently wrapping up your next book on creativity, so it's perfect time to ask you about this. Your thoughts on creativity always prioritize people, process, and experience over outputs, recognition, and impact. And I really wanted you to tease out why you do that. But I suppose one way into that, I thought that I'd mention that we hear a lot from students in digital media making and outside that, because I talk to quite a few audiences sort of interested in getting online and making media and reaching different audiences in more accessible ways. Lots of people say, I'm just not creative. And I have my way of answering that, but I'm interested in whether you've come across that at all, but also what you would tell someone who says, I'm not a creative person.
Mm-hmm. I do have a thing about that, because I wrote a bit down about that in my book that you mentioned, and the section is called Creativity is a Thing That You Do. So I think the point there is that I mean, it starts off by saying that sometimes when I'm talking to students, then because I'm a creativity professor, well, then you might just think, oh, you must be very creative then to get this job. But I literally don't think about it like that. That's not to be self-effacing or whatever. It's like I don't even think that's a thing. Creative is a thing that you do. So I may have chosen in my life, which is, you know, it's a longer life than lots of other people's life. I've chosen to do some creative things. I've spent my time doing certain things, which now you can look at and say, oh, well, you've done that and that and that, so you must be very creative. But that's not even a thing. It's how I've spent some time. Yeah, sure. And because of that, I may be more experienced and confident in choosing to do other creative things, or thinking I can probably take up something else and do that, and it might be okay. But creativity is a thing that you do. It's not an amount of stuff. It's quite common, as you say, to think of it as a kind of an amount of juice that different people have got. So some people have got lots of the creativity juice, and people mostly think about themselves that they haven't got so much creativity juice, and maybe it would be nice if they did, but sadly they don't, or whatever. Often I find that's because they've been told when they're about 12 or 13 at school, often by a teacher, that they're not creative, which doesn't seem to be one of the roles of teachers, I don't think. But it's pretty common that, you know, loads of people have got a story like, you know, I was working on this collage, I was working on this film, working on this whatever, and I thought it was quite good, and teachers said, it's not good, basically, don't do that. Maybe you should be doing this thing like what I told you to do, or whatever. And it's surprisingly common. It's not always exactly that story, but there's something where somebody's quite proudly, in an early teen kind of age, they're quite proudly made a thing and shown it to somebody else, and that person's been like, yeah. and just some sort of they don't even intend to be mean, or maybe they think they're being helpful because maybe this other person is like, oh yeah, but why don't you do this, this, and this? And immediately just knocks all of the person's confidence away. And they think, you know, I'm not creative. And then that just stays. So then, like, I sometimes meet like mature students who are like 45 or whatever, you know, any age, on a course where I'm talking about creativity. And they're like, but I've thought for the past 30 years that I wasn't creative because there's this thing that happened. And they haven't really managed to rethink it since then. So those things are really impactful. That was a very long way of answering that bit. But yeah, so it's not about a different amount of juice. It is quite like the idea of creativity muscles. So, you know, if you took me to a professional gym and I'd never been in a gym before, I wouldn't do very well because I wouldn't really know what I was doing. I haven't done lots of exercise, you know, so you wouldn't expect me to be great at it. Whereas if I went to the gym once a week for a number of years, then I'd be very adept at it because I've developed those muscles. And creativity is like a muscle, and the more you exercise it, the more you feel able to use it. And so it's totally not surprising that if people haven't done some creative things in the past few years, they're not going to think they're creative. Of course they're not. Why would they? But they absolutely can. It's not an amount of thing that you've got in you. It's just something you need to exercise, and then it works.
There are countless things to be said about creativity, but the one thing that I wanted to reflect on here is the connection between doing creative things and utilizing Creative Commons licensed material. Lots of people feel that conforming to copyright is restrictive, but I want to emphasize here that if you approach it from the right angle and with the right mindset, it's actually immensely empowering. Now, I love making my own stuff. Images, audio, video. It's one of the best things I get to do in and outside of my job. But sometimes it's not only more efficient, but also more effective to draw on resources that others have generously shared with Creative Commons licenses, which invite me, you, and anyone else to incorporate their work into our own media. When I'm searching for Creative Commons licensed content, most of the time I don't even really know what I'm looking for. I just have a theme in mind that I'm trying to illustrate or a mood that I'm trying to convey. And a brief search for images on a site like Flickr or music on SoundCloud or video footage on Vimeo or YouTube, and there's lots of other options, allows me to discover a picture or an audio track or some moving images that I could never have come up with by myself. If you checked out my last video, you might have been wondering how could I have possibly used some footage from a 1974 interview with Arthur C. Clarke in my own publicly published media. Well, the reason that I could use that is that the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which has rights over it, has shared that with a Creative Commons license. And a number of images I'm using in this video were even easier to find, download, use, and credit. At the time I'm filming this, more than 1.6 billion works have been shared by creators from all around the world. Creative Commons is a truly beautiful feature of the internet that the vast majority of students, teachers, and industry practitioners I've met over the years don't even know about, much less take advantage of. Taking copyright law into account might not be the norm in many parts of the online world, but it's a very handy thing to understand. And being able to harness the power of the Creative Commons may well offer a range of benefits you haven't yet considered. It's also worth noting that social media platforms are more enthusiastically combating copyright breaches these days, so organisations of all kinds are undoubtedly going to value people who know how to create content legally and ethically even more than they already have in the past. If you want to find out more about Creative Commons, I highly recommend checking out the website, which I can screen here because it's shared with the Creative Commons license itself. Thanks once again to David for his time.
But not David Duchovny, was it? Loser.
And thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to leave a comment down below and subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with future videos. You can find much more media from me via the links in the description, and feel free to connect with me as Digital Zones on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Until next time, have a creative week. And by that I don't mean be creative this week. I mean, do a creative week. Something like that.
Holy hell, you'd be lucky to even get David Hasselhoff.
Shut up.